that's why I think they target college students. But I mean, I guess maybe he's thought it through now with his spreadsheets and everything.
I mean, hey, we appreciate a good spreadsheet.
Yeah. Well, our next story is brought to you by Mirror.co. If you have been on TikTok as well as Twitter for more than 5 minutes this past week and a half, you know this story. It's going to be one of 3, and we're going to do all 3.
Okay.
We're going to do the first one. The girl who was hit in the face with a brick.
A brick.
A brick. So a woman's horrific injuries after a man hurls a brick at her face for refusing to share the number. A viral video, which posted on Instagram on Sunday, reportedly shows a woman named Ro Bashi in Texas documenting, I don't know what is wrong with my tongue today, her experience of allegedly being hit by a brick as a group of men watched on. The woman has been left with horrific facial injuries after a man allegedly hurled a brick at her face because she refused to give him her number. There has been a lot of talk on this topic. I mean, actually, when I got home today, my brother was like, "Have you heard the latest discourse?"
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, literally. So the overall consensus or the overall conversation is around this question. I'm going to ask Freeman, and I'm asking you guys. She was upset because this man hit her with a brick, and there were tons of men standing around, and no one did anything. All of these men just stood there. And the big question on everyone's mind is, do random strange men have an obligation to help random strange women? Freeman, would you like to go first?
I think if you believe in the dignity of every human being, yes. If you have a mentality that's all for one for all, I'm not getting involved, then philosophically, not doing anything is consistent. But if you believe in the dignity of every human being and you believe that their right to life is equally important as your right to life, then I think you absolutely should get involved. What does getting involved look like? It could look like physically stopping the person. That might be risky for a series of reasons. You never know who has a gun, especially, these days, depending on what state you're in.
Fair.
I think it could look like calling the police. It could look like filming it. I talked to Andy about this, and he said that if it were him, he likes to think he would get involved in some way. Being in a group is also shown to have a failure rate in things like this because that herd mentality of either A, it's not as bad as we think it is, or B, someone else in the group has called the police or is doing something. Therefore, I don't need to do anything. So it could have been a series of things like that, but I absolutely think something needed to happen. And that's why the herd mentality is so
dangerous,
problematic, and dangerous. Because if you're alone, you're much more likely to be like, whoa, what's going on? If you're with people, especially if you're with coworkers or you're with people that you think, you're inferior to, you're much less likely to step out of that norm and do something risky, especially if it could risk yourself, the people around you. You don't know. It could risk your social status. It could risk all kinds of things. So while I think those are valid, I don't think that any of that is a valid reason to accept another person's harm and detriment, especially a woman. I mean, pretty much anybody, no matter how loco they might be, can acknowledge that a man hitting a woman is unacceptable.
Well, sister, you must not have Twitter.
Oh my gosh. Okay, what do you think?
I'm going to throw some things at you, and then I'll give my opinion. I'm going to throw some things at you. I want to hear, your thoughts on this. So, first of all, I like how you said getting involved could include calling 911 and things like that. I don't think anyone has mentioned that at all. Everybody is stuck on the fact of, getting in there, stopping him physically, like getting so that
Mhm.
she is not hit. So I think that's what everyone is kind of focusing on. But I really like that she said the
Okay.
911 thing, because to be honest, that completely slipped out of my mind too. Now, this man is coming at this woman with a brick. Do you still think you should step in if he is hitting her with a brick, and you might be hit with a brick in your head? You have a family, you have a wife, you have kids. If it
Okay,
hits you
I
in your head, you
think
can get brain damage. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't know if other women necessarily should, because
Well,
it's like,
men. Let's
okay,
talk about men, because I mean, let me tell you, the people who are talking the most about it are the men, and they have thoughts. But keep going.
I'm not sure that you're required to take a bullet for someone else that you don't know. I do think, though, if it's inevitable, I think at least record it. I mean, we can all agree that, like,
That does help.
that does help. And that can, and I think yelling and recording, I don't feel like, you need to step, because, like, I'm just thinking about this actually taking place. How would you step in between? I feel like distract the person, or try to calm them down, or reorient their thinking, or throw them off, or tell them the police are coming, or tell them that you've got it on video, or tell them unless they stop, like, you're gonna call the police. Like, I don't know. I feel like there are other ways.
Like, there's steps before it got to that.
There's steps before it got to that, I think. And I also imagine, like, I'm really having a hard time believing that she just said, like, "Oh, sorry, sir, like, I'm taken," or "Sorry, sir, like, I
Well,
don't think, that I'm gonna give you my phone number. Thank you, though, that I'm flattered," and then he hits her. Like, I feel like there's escalation. I don't feel like we're getting the story. So what do you think?
okay, so let me give you a little bit more information. Over the past couple of days, they have found her TikToks and her Twitters and things. She has said how much she hates men, things like that. Like,
I would hate
she's
men if I was hit in the brick. If
this
I was
is
hit in the face with a brick.
before the brick situation.
Okay.
So in the past, before the brick situation, she talked about how she hates men and how women are superior. She apparently is known to being kind of like a troublemaker. There's a video of her. I don't know the context at all, but she just walks up to this random man, slaps him, walks away, and then twerks. Now, I don't know if this man consented to the slap. The video, they're making it seem like this. She just
Wow.
randomly slapped a man, then twerk, and I just can't. Once again, that's hard for me to fathom, that she would just come up to a random man, slap him, and then twerk. But then also, I can't fathom what would be the point of consenting to someone slapping you then twerking. I don't know. This woman
Uh-huh.
has a lot of. There's a lot of more context, I guess you could say, to
Mhm.
it. Um. So with everything that we know, kind of ish now, I agree there has to have been an escalation. So I'm going to go backwards. So I definitely think there has to have been an escalation. I think you make a very good
Mhm.
point. It's hard for me to believe that it went, "Oh, no, sir. Thank you." What do you mean, you B word?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to believe that. Could that have happened? Sure. I haven't really seen that happen. I've seen people get up, and I'm not blaming women, and I'm not blaming
For
this
sure.
woman either. Like, no one should be hit with the brick. Let's start off with that. No one should be hit with the brick. Let it be said, we do not condone brick hitting people. But they're
While it is creative.
right. While it is creative, you could use your creativity to do other things. Because
Yes.
you know what? For me, that's another good point. When I heard a brick, I was like, this doesn't make sense. Let me see. Let me do some more research on this. A brick? What?
Who has a
Her
brick handy, you know?
in her face, like, you guys should just look up the picture. It's horrific. Like,
Yes.
horrific. Um,
She was definitely hit with a brick.
that
That is
we
not
know
in
for
question.
sure. Like, if we're questioning anything else, we do know this woman has been hit with a brick. Okay, that
Yes.
there's no doubt about that. So, okay, so going micro then macro. Um, you know, it when women, once again, not blaming women, if we're approached by a man and someone ask for your number and you don't feel comfortable giving it to them, you don't have to give it to them. You can. I know in the comments, some people, especially at the beginning when we didn't know everything, people were saying, well, I have a fake Google number. I have another phone that I give them, which, that seems a bit much to me. But if that makes you feel comfortable, sure.
I've done that.
Some people carry pepper spray. Some people keep that thing on them. I mean, whatever you need to do to protect yourself is perfectly fine. I do not think it makes any sense to treat another human and go, ha, you, give you my number.
Oh,
Get
right.
one of this, girls. He's asking
Yeah.
like, let's be honest with ourselves. I don't know if this girl did that. I'm talking in general. Let's be honest with ourselves. We've seen girls do that. There is no reason to do that. A simple, no thank you, sir. Keep walking. Or here's a number, and you give them a fake number. Someone said they give their boyfriend's number. Some people, which I think would be hilarious. Some people say they give their dad's number, their brother's number. Do whatever you think is necessary to protect yourself. Making fun of another human being is not protecting yourself. So that's just something.
That leads to suicide.
Yes. That's just something that I was thinking of when I was thinking about the whole situation. Pulling out more. The idea of does a random man, would I expect a random man to step in and stop someone from hitting me with a brick if it escalated to that part? I think you might have said it, or I thought this in my head. I don't see myself in a situation where it escalates to that part. Someone who was cooked on Twitter, I mean, the girlies were mad at her for saying this, but I kind of agree. She said something like, the people who protect you would be like your brother and your father, your husband, your boyfriend. Like
they have an obligation. They have a covenant with you that they will put themselves in harm's way to protect you.
Yes.
And vice versa.
Yes. And did you watch the video? Yes, that's what she said. Vice versa.
I just know what you're about to say.
And vice versa. And how is it vice versa? This is how she said, you obey them. Now, okay, you hear like obey, and she shouldn't have used the word obey because that for everybody, but this is what she means. If you're, for example, my brother, you know what? I don't think you should go, let's say my brother, my group of friends and his group of friends end up seeing each other out in Uptown one night. That's where we live. And we're about to start heading in a direction, and he goes, hey, I don't think you should head over there. That it doesn't look good things are happening over there. I, as a woman and as like a decent human being, should go, ding, 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 this is my brother. He cares about me. If he's saying this probably isn't good over there, let me not go over there. So what she was trying to say is like, that's kind of like quote unquote obeying. So like listening to when they are saying things like, hey, don't go over there. Another example she said is like, if you're somewhere and like there's a shootout and your father says, get down. It doesn't make sense for you to be like, I'm not going to get down. I'm going to do whatever I want. No, you get down.
I'm an independent woman.
Exactly. There's no point of doing that. So I think like that. So she basically said that, and the girlies did not like that. And I understand, some of the language she used, but like if you actually think
what did she mean in the context of this though?
That she wouldn't have been in the situation. She should not have been in the situation. That woman, the brick woman, should not have been in the situation because she is a known like going places where she shouldn't be, loudmouth, like her town knows her.
That feels a lot like victim blaming. I'm sorry.
No, I don't disagree that it feels victim blaming. I think that when you pull out of the situation, like how do you avoid doing this? How do you, regular girl, avoid being in the situation? I think that is more of the lesson. You know what I mean? Like,
but we don't know that she was in a bad area. She could have been walking to work,
Well, oh no. Okay. So I guess, let me see if I should have showed you the video. It was at night. It was like leaving a club, like 3 a.m. or something like that. And I think it looked like they were all like working on a construction site. And she probably shouldn't have been in the area. Like, once again, not victim blaming, but like, it's 2023. We should be able to say, like, women, like, we know this, like, certain things we should not be doing. Whether we can say that as human beings, we should not feel, you should never walk around feeling like unsafe, but that's just not reality. We live in a fallen world. So sometimes you have to protect yourself in a certain way. Sometimes you have to use wisdom and discernment when you are going about life. So like the whole
I think
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I'm just saying, like, the whole situation, like, could have been like the whole thing could have been avoided. But when we go down, we shrink down to what had happened. The man hitting her with the brick. That we cannot blame her. Like, there is no reason for him to have hit her unless she murdered his family. There's no reason for him to have hit her with the brick. So we can say that. I think the whole overarching thing probably could have been avoided.
I think in situations like this, 75% of the conversation needs to be, it was wrong what he did.
Right.
How can we prevent aggressive men? And how can we help other men prevent things like this? I think maybe 25% of the conversation can be, what could she have done differently? But I think majority of the conversation should always be, why did he do this? How is justice going to be served? What do the other men who sat and watched deserve? And how can this be avoided on the man's side?
Once again, you are not on Twitter. It would have been great to have your input. That is a fabulous take. Did not see that once. The entire conversation is, should these men have stepped in to protect this woman? Freeman, that is very nuanced. You are making a good point. Like, it should not have come to this. Men should be able to experience rejection, because even if she had laughed and said no, men should be able to, okay, and like move forward. Like, you don't have to react aggressively, but that's not being discussed at all. I mean, people, they've called her everything but a child of God. Like, it has not been, the conversation has just gone off the rails. But yikes. I do think
this is why I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah. And everybody has an opinion. So I guess, like, to wrap this up, what is like your final thoughts about this? Maybe tell us what's a good way you think to help men not be so aggressive in their response.
I think I think this goes also to a different direction, but I do think there is a such thing as toxic masculinity, and I think this is an example of it. I think men are unable to project aggression in healthy ways, and I think sometimes it comes out in these very violent outbursts. So I think changing that culture of violence among men, I think would be helpful. What about you?
I think that men, and this is going to sound silly, but men realizing that they're enough, I think, is what would help.
What does that mean?
Oh, yeah, you haven't seen Barbie. So at the end, Ken learns that he is enough. He is enough. What do I mean by that? If a girl rejects you, it's not the end of the world. I think just learning that, like, if a girl rejects you, it's not the end of the world. If you don't get this XYZ, it's not the end of the world. So you are fine. You can do other things. This one girl doesn't like you. You're enough. You don't have to change who you are. Just find another girl that likes you. I think that, and I mean, that's such a female thing for me to say, but I do think that can make a difference. Because I just don't understand how it gets to you, like, hitting someone with a brick. Like, people have yelled at me, said some terrible, awful things to me at rallies, like pro-life rallies, protests, stuff like that. I've never once thought, let me hit this person with a brick. I cannot imagine how it gets to that, other than you just having so much anger. Like, that's such anger, and I think a lot of the anger is just insecure. It comes from insecurity. I think a lot of it comes from insecurity. And if men knew that they were enough, like, I think that would have made a difference.
For sure.
All right, next story. Another thing that is going viral on Twitter, and you guessed it, the 30 talk. Here is the video. Everybody, I'm going to play it.